welcome everybody to the first Heresy Central podcast. We're very excited about this because we have on a special guest, Johnny Monoxide. The host of the show is Jonathan Revusky, the creator of the Heresy Central website. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, who can talk a little bit about the purpose of his site, and then Johnny Monoxide can introduce himself.
The purpose of the website is what I call heresy, but heresy is not heresy against any traditional religion like Christianity or Islam. It's heresy against the secular dogmas, basically, that dominate our world. So it seems like a good idea to talk to different people with different heretical ideas and get some perspectives that you won't get on the mainstream media. I guess we can start off by talking about talking with Johnny, and I'd talk about it too, our various intellectual evolution towards becoming heretics. As I said, and when we were talking before, I read your. I don't have an SPLC hate page. I was feeling envy. I figure that shows you're doing something right when SPLC puts up a page to.
It's not exactly being noticed by Senpai, but it is. It's. I don't know. I wear it like a badge of honor. To be honest, I think it's pretty awesome. Actually, not only do I have an SPLC page, you guys forgot, I have an ADL. I'm on the ADL's hate map as well. So.
Well,
that's a double whammy. That's like you have officially batted 1,000 if both the ADL and the SPLC have not only noticed you, but made it an entire made it somebody's job to write about you to possibly try and ruin your life. A lot of the stuff on the SPLC's page is incorrect and.
I assume that. And
yeah.
You have every opportunity
but it's still
to correct
hilarious.
it.
Oh, I don't care. I don't want to. Let them think what they want. But I mean, I just think it's funny.
Don't assume that I believe any of it.
Oh yeah.
It's the first thing that comes up, though, if one Googles your
of course
your artistic name. Of course, we know that. So
of course it does. That's the way that Google, and it's not like Google has any particular, agenda either. To set this kind of thing, algorithm up to where that would pop up at the top. There's probably no way there's probably no way in my lifetime to ever get that, cause that to not be the top hit when you Google Johnny Monoxide, which it's fine, whatever. Most normies don't even know what the SPLC is, so I'm not that worried about it. Like I said, I think it's kind of cool, actually. You said now you're talking about intellectual journeys. Yeah, on the SPLC page, it says that I used to be some sort of a liberal. I guess you could call it that. When I got out of the Navy, I was kind of an Adam Kokesh, dude, weed, Bush did 9/11 type anarchist, sort of.
Yeah, I've seen that, Adam Kokesh and some of his stuff,
yeah.
On YouTube.
He's, that libertarian dude, Maweed, don't violate the NAP and more roads, so, I was kind of like that. He was former military, I was former military. I kind of thought along the same lines as he did. And then I got into, very much deeper into like the conspiracy world and into the 9/11 Truth and the 9/11 Truth kook movement, which I was a part of for a while. And now I kind of consider myself more along the actual 9/11 Truth movement. But,
how do you
brought me.
How do you distinguish the 9/11 Truth movement from the 9/11 Truth kook movement? That's interesting.
Well, we don't believe in lasers and, miniature nuclear devices and holographic airplanes. Once you start getting into that territory, you start losing a lot of people. Even if those stories are, interspersed with the actual facts. Like we just did an interview with Ryan Dawson last night. He's probably one of the top, if not right now, the top 9/11 researcher out there.
His name rings a bell.
Yeah, he's got a documentary called War is Always by Deception. He's done quite a bit with 9/11, and his point is, doesn't matter how. The how doesn't really matter as much as the who, which is way more important. Once you figure out the who, then you can get into the how. More people are worried about the how and not really concerned about who really did it, and that's where, Bush did 9/11, that meme, and even there was a rapper, what's his name? Immortal Technique had that song, Bush Took Down the Towers, or Bush did 9/11 or something like that. And that's like the blue-pilled normie, but still quote unquote woke. We know it was an inside job, but it was Bush. And they won't come out and say Israel. They won't come out and look at the long list of Israeli operatives that in the government and in the FBI and on the ground and in the 9/11 Commission. I mean, look at the 9/11 Commission and tell me that wasn't the exact same joke that like the Warren Commission was. So
we're in agreement about these things, broadly speaking, I'm sure.
But yeah, so that's the difference is you take out the mini nukes and the thermite paint. I mean, we get it. There was explosives. Yes, there were bombs found. There was a truck full of bombs that was unexploded. That doesn't get talked about because they only want to talk when they want to talk about, not the kook movement, but the other normies want to talk about, the jet fuel melting steel beams and the buildings collapsing simply from fire. They want to leave that. They want to leave the bombs out, even though there's, video after video after video of people talking about ground level explosions. But yeah,
but in a sense, does it matter really? I mean, let's say we go to a high-end magic show in Las Vegas, right? Siegfried and Roy, are those guys still around? Anyway, we see all these carefully constructed illusions. Somebody walks on water, or somebody, walks through a wall. I mean, we know these things are illusions, but the game that's played is that unless you can explain how they constructed the illusion, therefore somebody really did walk through a wall or, walk on water or whatever. I mean, you watch a movie and you see something impossible happen in a movie, unless you can explain how they constructed the illusion, then this actually must be real, right? I mean...
to most people, for most people, yes. I agree with that.
Because in the end, if something is simply physically impossible, it didn't happen. And that's that, and how they constructed this illusion and got people... Now it is of some interest how they got everybody believing this, but to me, actually, I think much more interesting than the technical details of how they blew up the buildings is the whole issue of the media. I mean, within a day, they were saying Osama bin Laden, and they had the narrative all prepared, and which group has the power to push their narrative like this, and that is actually, as it seems like, right off a stronger lead than all the stuff about the explosives.
Well, people don't really tend to believe that the media would do that. Most people in the U.S. are under the impression that, A, the government wouldn't do that, and B, if they did, we'd hear about it on the news.
Yeah, they'd report on themselves, I guess.
Sure.
But where does, say, architects and engineers for 9/11 truth go? I mean, you prove at the 200% overkill level that the official story can't possibly be true, and then what do you do for non-core? You prove at the 500% level, and then at the 1,000% level.
Right.
Where do they go? It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't seem.
Right, and that's, like I said, you can talk about the how until you're, purple in the face, but until you really understand who was really behind it and why. Who and why are much more important than how in this situation. I was stuck in the how for a very, very long time. And the how, it was like, using the how to try and red pill people on 9/11 is I know it was the wrong way to go about doing it now.
Oh, this is Jake. I'm just saying, I think the how actually was what red pilled me. But maybe I'm unusual.
Well, I'm not saying it doesn't red pill people, and there are some, but I think that an easier red pill to swallow is the who and why does it, because you can see, because you can see what happens. You can see the cause and effect of all these things a lot easier than, especially when you get like you said, the media. You have the media bombardment of what was it? For the next week, it was Rudy Giuliani and George Bush just saying the words terrorism and 9/11 3 or 4 times in every sentence, just to get that in people's heads. Then you had, Fox News and CNN and every other news channel just, with the bombardment. And of course, then you had, not only was it bin Laden, but then they tied it to Saddam Hussein and that evil yellow cake, plutonium or whatever, uranium that they had, the yellow cake uranium. And then, we got it. Now we got to go into Iraq. All was, it was just such a quick swoop, and it was done with the media, a lot easier than, the media is what made it happen.
Oh, yeah. But then that's my point. Examining the media and how they constructed all these narratives that had no basis in anything real and any facts, and managed to get everybody to believe these things, and everybody repeating these things. That's, I would say, more interesting than which particular explosive was used to blow up the buildings and things like this.
Oh, most definitely.
It's like talking about, what caliber of bullet and what firearm was used to shoot Kennedy. So what? It's like, what's important is the deep political implications of the event. They shot him. But you get all this sort of endless sort of gun nerd stuff. Oh yeah, well, they used a whatever caliber hollow
just to take you away from the fact that it was actually the Jewish mafia, right?
Oh, very likely, yeah. That's very likely, yeah.
It's more than like that. Have you ever listened to Michael Collins Piper or any of actually?
I have to admit, I haven't. That's Final Judgment. I haven't read that yet. It's on my list to read. Yeah.
It's on its 6th edition, I believe. I have 3 different copies of it, but it's pretty all-encompassing. I've been pretty woke to the JFK question thanks to him for a while.
Now the other thing that fascinates me about all of this sort of red pill process is this whole issue. In principle, once you realize that they're bullshitting you about one thing, you should then very quickly realize they're bullshitting you about other things. Like if when a child figures out that Santa Claus doesn't exist, doesn't that same child figure out that there's no Easter Bunny or Tooth Fairy in fairly short order? You'd think
right.
They do. I don't know. I'm sure there's no Santa Claus, but that Easter Bunny exists for sure. But somehow adults are kind of like this. Well, I know that that's not true, but these other things are true. And, this whole bounded awareness thing. Now, I didn't look. I listened to a couple of your Paranormies broadcasts, and I was very happy that you seemed to be aware of these kinds of conspiracy issues, because what you have with a lot of the ethno-nationalist type people, like I wrote half a dozen articles that appeared on the UNS Review. I don't know if you know the UNS Review. That's where
I do.
Sailor
Actually, it's been going around quite a bit more this week, especially after the Israel did 9/11 piece they did.
Yeah, UNS has just dropped all these bombshells all of a sudden. He took the position for 17 years or something that he just never looked into 9/11 because it just never came up to the top of his to-do list.
I think he's full of shit. He's been researching it for a while, and he's been waiting to drop this bomb. That was a very thorough article.
Well, it's hard to believe that he just
got into it,
Well, I don't know what he's up to. I used to be on good terms with UNS. I had correspondence with him starting in late 2015, and I was on good terms with him for about 6 months, and then he just got incredibly weird with me, and I'm not on good terms with him now.
Yeah, I can vouch. This is Jake. If I can interject, Johnny. Jonathan wrote a really great little article on this stewardess who was supposedly on one of the 9/11 planes, and Jonathan pretty much proved that this stewardess, Betty Ong, didn't actually exist. He actually.
Well, I didn't actually prove that. Well, it's hard to prove that.
Well, I'm sorry. I should say that you proved that there was something fishy here.
It's very dubious that she ever existed. But I would have to say that I didn't prove it. You see, the reason. But there's a whole backstory to that, because under a previous article, when nuns started getting hostile towards me, I expressed doubt that the conversation developed, in a comments section in which, nuns expressed absolute certainty that all of the victims in these various weird events like Orlando and Boston Marathon are real people. And I said that I currently was not very sure of that. And, for example, and I mentioned the case of Betty Ong, who just didn't seem to be a very real person. See, Betty Ong is this Chinese-American stewardess who, made a phone call from one of the planes on 9/11. You know about this, Johnny?
Of course.
It's part of the narrative. But it's just amazing. You go look for any description of this person. There's this Betty Ann Ong Foundation, and it's got a biographical page on her that is obviously not written by somebody who personally knew this person. And then there's hardly any photo of the person, and there don't seem to be any photos that aren't photoshopped of this person with any of the people who are supposedly her family members. But what happened was that Un started sort of sneering at me, talking about how crazy I was for doubting the existence of this Betty Ong woman. And somehow there was very little in her life history that you grab onto, but he expressed certainty that she would be she supposedly, there's one thing in her vitae, she supposedly graduated from George Washington High School in San Francisco in 1974. So Un's expressed absolute certainty that this woman would be in the high school yearbook, graduation picture. And, I could never get my hands on a yearbook. But the funny thing is, in private email, Un's wagered $10,000 that she was going to be in the high school yearbook. Anyway, finally the yearbook was online. I got and looked at it, and she's not in the 1974 yearbook. There's a weird twist in the story that there's a Betty Ong in the 1973.
What color was the person that you were with?
Well, she's in the 1973 yearbook, except that it's a black girl. Black Betty. It's the weirdest.
Betty Ong, was black.
Yes, I can attest to this.
Yeah, you can go look at it. You can.
Well, it's another one of those really weird, and we were actually talking about. She's the one that made was she the Flight 93 stewardess? Is that who she was supposed to be? Was it 93? Sure. Okay. So she's the one that made all the phone calls. Right?
It's Flight 11. 93 is the one for the Pentagon.
Okay. No, 77 is the Pentagon. 93 is the one that crashed in Shanksburg.
Oh yeah, well you know your stuff, huh? No,
no, she's the one that with the famous phone call, and and in the Truth Movement they say that all the phone calls are fake. Well, in the there's the.
I'm pretty sure they are, Johnny. I think that's.
I have that's the thing is I really want to believe the non-kook story version of it, but at the same time I'm like people are like, well, why would you believe that they would do that? Why would they do that? I'm like, well, why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they fake the phone calls? Why wouldn't they do this? Why wouldn't they do that? And these people are like, well, why wouldn't they allow 19 Saudis to steal airplanes? I'm like, well, because
I don't believe any of that, the 19 Saudis story. But
right, I don't believe that, but it's along the same lines. Why wouldn't they? These people are like, well, John, they're obviously using air phones, the plane phones. They're not using cell phones. God. I mean, come
Well,
on.
I don't think she was in a.
You're telling me
necessarily. Why even believe that she was in a
managed
plane?
to pull out their credit card? Like these people managed to pull out their credit card and swipe their credit card through the back of the phone so they could make a phone call while these people are hijacking the airplane.
But Johnny, it's just a recording. They could just be sitting anywhere, and I could call you on the phone right now and say that I'm in a plane getting hijacked by some Arabs. I mean, what's? I mean, is this their proof? It's yes, and then Osama bin Laden made a video saying that he did it, and that shows that and that's the proof. I mean, I could put up a video tomorrow saying I did it. I mean, what is this? It's
along the same lines as the picture of the one. There's like one, like wheel rim from an 757 that is laying somehow inside of the Pentagon. That's their evidence of an actual plane. There's a piece like those things have two, 1 ton. They're 1.5 tons, titanium alloy jet turbine rotors. Those are very large, and neither of those were. I didn't see either of those getting dragged out, but they do have the black box, which they did find. So, how does the black box being found change the whole no plane scenario for the Pentagon? Because I kind of was a no planer for the Pentagon for a long time.
Well, I have doubts about any of the planes, frankly. I don't know.
Right. Actually, you want to hear? Speaking of that, I have something queued up that I didn't get to play last night. I mean, since it's 9/11, why not? Right? It's like the 12th. We might as well just do 9/11 stuff, right? No, but
we could talk about 9/11, but I wasn't planning to just solely talk about 9/11.
I know. But there's the firefighters who were talking after the buildings went down or whatever. And there's a black firefighter and 2 white guys, and they're talking about the explosions. Mostly people listening to talk, because they're talking about the explosions in the lobby. Well,
there's one guy who's quite articulate, the black guy, Rudy Dent. Is that his name?
No, not him. That's the guy from Building 7 that they killed.
They killed Rudy? No, you're the Barry Jenkins they killed.
Was it Barry Jenkins? Okay.
Barry Jenkins is another black guy they killed, but I don't think he was a firefighter. I'm pretty sure. Okay, I'm pretty sure you're talking Barry Jenkins. Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Rudy Dent, I think, is still alive. This is the last I checked.
Very long, considering how fast these people are dying of mesothelioma.
No, Rudy Dent seems to not. For some reason, they haven't killed him. That would seem.
This is Jake interjecting. Could I ask a question, Johnny? When you say that this black person was killed, you mean he was killed on 9/11? Or you mean he was murdered or killed later?
Sometime afterwards. Okay. Sometime afterwards.
Yeah,
how long afterwards? I'm not sure. Maybe a couple of years afterwards. I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't right away. I believe it was 2003, 2004, maybe.
And he supposedly died of an illness or something, I would assume, right? I mean, they just say. The Dutch demolitions expert, Jowenko, he supposedly he had a single vehicle accident with his dog. He just sort of drove into a tree for some reason, apparently. I mean,
sure.
That's you know about that. I mean, that's weird. I mean, but that was after.
People in this thing tend to do that kind of stuff every now and then. It's weird. But in this video I was talking about, so there's another. So the fireman's talking about the explosions. The other fireman's talking about the explosions. This other fireman said that he was in Brooklyn and he saw the black airplane hit the towers. Now, everybody remembers these being, were they American Airlines? And, American Airlines planes are white with white letters, or is it white with whatever? They're white, red.
But they can't fly that fast at sea level anyway.
Sure.
So there's a problem with the whole story. It doesn't seem. They were way outside of their operational limit. I have great doubts that any plane hit any building on 9/11 personally, because I just don't see the need for it, right? I mean, why? If you can just tell people, there's operationally there's no need for any plane to hit a building. All you need is for people to believe that planes hit buildings, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. Jake, Johnny, did you have some audio queued up that we could actually play? Something interesting?
Well, I was gonna do the black airplane thing, but this is a guy who supposedly saw it. All right, hang on one second.
It's up to.
Well, is it very long? I mean, well.
No, it's like 30 seconds. It's 20 seconds.
Oh, if it's 20 seconds, sure, why not?
Yeah, sure. Here, check this out.
We're sitting in the Brooklyn Navy on Ports in Brooklyn. We watched the first explosion. As we were watching the buildings, we saw a black, very large airplane fly right into the second building. It came out of the south, right in front of our eyes. It was so surreal, like a movie set.
Second and third explosions also, right?
We were in the building for the third one. It collapsed. I was on this drive here for the other one.
People on this.
Okay, did you hear what he said? We were in the building for the third one collapse. So this guy, to me, I want to say this guy is actually a plant.
Well, I tend to think that everybody who says that they saw planes hit buildings with their own two eyes is probably a plant. I mean, there's the famous Harley guy. Remember the guy in the Harley T-shirt? So that was a guy.
Shirt and he had the brand new snapback hat on too. Yeah, with the FBI mustache.
Yeah, he's. I mean, that whole video is so weird. There's a black guy next to him who's just watching, who seems to possibly be his handler or something, who is just watching the whole thing, and I guess to make sure he hits all the agreed upon talking points, and then. I mean, there's something very strange about that whole video with the Harley guy, but that's sort of iconic. Now, the reason I mentioned the UN's review was mentioning these sorts of ethno-nationalist, racialist writers there is the one thing. I've basically come to kind of despise these people because, and not particularly for being racist, which is their own business. What I find is just, these are people, their entire anti-establishment dissident position all centers around the culture war, race, gender stuff. But then, everything else, they just won't go there, whether it's 9/11 or the conventional history of World War II. I mean, their entire dissident position is just the PC culture war stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, they'll do the World War II thing because the Holocaust. They're like, of course, this is what bothers me about a lot of this stuff as well, and I've said this on a couple of other shows a couple of different times, is that, of course the the conspiracies that these people do believe in. The Jews are running the entire world secretly and publicly. The Holocaust didn't happen. And
but the main racialist writers on UN's review don't ever go there to the Holocaust.
Oh, you're talking about? You're talking about UN's. I'm talking about even like on like even in my circles in the alt-right.
Oh, okay. I was talking about certain writers on the UN's review. I mean, and then UN's himself went and wrote this big article on the Holocaust, and then followed it up by a big article on 9/11. Just recently, and I have to admit I was dumbfounded by both things because I just assumed he was just going to sit on the fence forever on issues like that. But you were saying in your circles, they do go there somewhat, right? But then
so like this, those two conspiracies, are totally acceptable, but everything else is just ridiculous.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is,
they believe that, they believe that the Jews control the narrative for everything in the media because they do, But then when it comes to something like
that's not very far from the truth.
No, it is the truth. It is the truth.
Okay.
I mean,
it is the truth.
Right? Well, no, it is the truth.
It's basically the truth. And,
100%. That the media is just a propaganda. But then they don't believe like Sandy Hook, or could possibly be, some sort of a government operation, or the school shooting in Florida, or Oklahoma City.
Yeah, there's so many of those.
They don't believe. They don't. No. We believe the official story on everything, except the Jews running everything. You know what I mean? It's like I don't get. If you think the Jews run the media, why would you believe the media's story on 9/11 or the Parkland shooting or anything? Why would you believe the media?
But you see, that's what my point that I was trying to get at. Once you stop believing in one of the damn things, wouldn't the rest of us fall quickly? I mean, if a little child stops believing in Santa Claus, don't they just stop believing in the Easter Bunny pretty soon afterwards?
You would think that's the way it would be, but I think maybe these, there's a lot of, more respectability. I can't be seen thinking, the polite company would think I'm crazy if I said that.
Now, there's so many of these things now, but here's one that just comes to mind. That Dylan Roof character, right? Remember that guy? I mean, this guy is supposedly mad at black people. I mean, so mad. I mean, not just a little bit mad at black people. He's so mad at black people, he arms himself to the teeth and goes shoots a bunch of innocent black people, right? So which black people does he kill? He goes to this black church and attends he attends some Bible study group, and these black ladies are nice and sweet to him, apparently. I mean, this is the story. And then at some point, while they're pondering the meaning of whatever biblical verse, he pulls out a gun and starts shooting all the people, right? Now, obviously it's some sort of synthetic narrative, because the guy, he chooses, like, the sweetest, nicest black people on the face of the earth, right? I mean, he goes to the black church, right, and sits in a Bible study group, right? It's like, why? I mean, that would never happen. I mean, maybe some dude who's been bullied too much and snaps. I mean, you would think he'd go to the local pool hall or something and kill some black juvenile delinquents who had been bullying him or something. I mean, he goes to the church and kills these church ladies. I mean,
I don't even remember. There was something about the people that he killed as well. There was something political too, I believe.
Well, there's a lot of crisis actor stuff going. I think it's just a big hoax,
Sure.
Yeah, can I intervene? This is Jake. So yeah, I mean, Jonathan's totally right about the Dylan Roof thing. It just does not make sense. I mean, as an ethno-nationalist type myself, I mean, I have personal friends who are black, and I would certainly never shoot them just because I'm an ethno-nationalist, just because I think that my nation should maintain a majority European, white majority. Does not mean I want to start killing innocent church ladies. I mean, so that was my introduction.
Right. Well, who the hell wants to go kill some innocent church ladies of any color? I mean,
that's the whole thing. They always make it out to be like, some crazy guy who really hated blacks so much that he went, and like he said, church ladies. He drove a very long distance. He drove a long distance past many, many, many towns full of blacks and didn't stop until he got to that particular church. Which that particular church is some sort of landmark too. There was some other stuff that went along with it. I kind of chalked that up to being fake and stopped listening to it. I don't know. It's kind of interesting the way Dylan Roof has become, for some of the harder right sort of fringier kind of people, they're, Dylan Roof nationalism, get your bowl cut, because he's got that bowl cut. When you go bowl cut, that's like going postal now, I
have to say my mother gave me a bowl cut when I was really about 3 years old, and it's still cringy.
Oh, I have the family photo I have of my dad, my mom, my brother, and I when I was probably 4, and my son, when he was 4, would point at that picture and they'd be like, "Who's that? That's Grandpa. Who's that? That's Nana. Who's that? That's Uncle Mike. Who's that? That's me, Daddy." Because he had a bowl. My kid, his first haircut was a bowl cut. My first haircut was a bowl cut. I think it's just natural for the kid's first haircut to be kind of like that, or when they're young to have a little bit of a bowl cut.
But Dylan Roof was 20, whatever
19.
he was. He was not a child.
Yeah, he's 19 or 20 and still rocking the bowl cut.
But now, again, Jonathan's directing this. He's the interviewer here, but there's something.
Wow.
Now, I have a coworker who told me he was hypnotized and made to do things, and afterwards he had no memory of doing it. This is a coworker. So there some of these things that are going on may have, like I said, I don't want to go all kooky here, but there's something going on here where
that's a possibility. But
Well,
again, I would say that I would go back to the magic show analogy and say that the fact that they construct an illusion and that we can see that it's an illusion, that it's not real, doesn't necessarily create an absolute onus on us to explain how they constructed the illusion. I mean, there could be various ways. I mean, these are technical details, but the people get fed a synthetic narrative, and they go with that, like this Dylan Roof thing, and they don't. And who was that guy? It's American Renaissance, Jared
Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote some bizarre article, and that appeared on the Unz Review, among other places, trying to rationalize what Dylan Roof allegedly did. I mean, but I mean, this brings me to another question, which is this whole question of, infiltration, controlled opposition. I mean, we were talking about 9/11 truth, and how so much of it seems to get pushed in basically a sterile direction, right? I mean, let's just talk about the explosives and, on and on. And it just doesn't really lead anywhere in terms of the deep political understanding of the situation, I mean, maybe some people are just obsessed with the technical details out of a certain kind of nerdiness, but then other people may well be pushing the discussion in a sterile direction, because they're shills, I mean, what about the infiltration problem? I mean, in terms of all sorts of dissident movements,
So this is Jake. I mean, Johnny, just that Jonathan is not alt-right or dissident right like we are at all. But I think Jonathan truly believes that no movement like ours will be unmolested. That any movement like ours will be heavily infiltrated and led astray. So I just wanted to clarify that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you understood my point, right? I mean.
Yes, totally. I did it. No, I get it. Yeah, and I understand. Yeah, you told me before that Jonathan wasn't the same on the same political spectrum as like me, for example.
Right. I'm not at all interested in demonizing you. I mean, I'm just interested in hearing out. I mean, if I disagree with you about certain things, well, I disagree with you, but I mean, it's not like SPLC that's going to create a hate page and demonize you. I mean, no,
exactly.
I mean, you see, that's an interesting question, right? I mean, their position, well, not just with respect to you personally, but you are a case, is not to say, well, this guy's saying this and we respectfully disagree with him. Their position is to say that this is an evil, wicked person who believes these things. And that of course, is their approach to, Holocaust revisionism.
Right.
It isn't that we think these people are wrong and disagree with them. It is, these are evil, wicked people because they don't believe our sacred dogma, right?
Right.
So that's just the point. I mean, the extent that I, don't agree about, whatever ideological thing, it's not that I'm trying to demonize anybody. I'll just hear you out. That's right. My position.
Well, John, do you want to address the infiltration issue? That'd be a good place to start.
It's a big issue. I mean, you can give some general thoughts. I mean, I don't.
What exactly are you asking now?
Well, I mean, it's a big question. Well, here's another way of framing it. I mean, like, look at what happened in East Germany, right? I mean, when the wall fell. I mean, it turned out that half the society was spying on the other half. I mean, what percentage of the people were somehow Stasi informants, right? I mean, people who were supposedly dissidents of different sorts, or free thinkers, or but even the groups that were anti-system there. I mean, so many of the people turned out when they opened up the files of the Stasi, they saw that, all these people who maybe were thought to have dissident credentials that were beyond reproach were actually working for the Stasi, right? So,
Right.
So this is something that has intrigued me, which is not that it's going to happen, but imagine something like that actually happens, say, in the United States or the West generally, and you could see which heretical or dissident figures really are just like on the CIA or Mossad payroll, and it would be that would be quite interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's is it actually going to happen?
Well, I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's just a thought experiment. I mean, I just, I had a conversation, because I don't think I'm betraying any confidence. I talk to Kevin Barrett occasionally, and, and I had this conversation, and this frequently comes up because Kevin's a bit, I call it the, Will Rogersism. You know how, you remember the famous Will Rogers quote, I never met a man I didn't like? That's also kind of Dale Carnegieism, how to win friends and influence people. Sales literature is full of this kind of stuff, about, but I called it Will Rogersism. I mean, but when the conversation, but I realized there's a certain pattern would happen in the conversation where the topic of some person comes up, and I would say, gee, there's something fishy about that person, and Kevin would say, no, I think this person's really for real, and and I can't prove one way or the other, right, in any given case,
right.
But I'm just saying that if this cataclysmic event happened equivalent to the Stasi files opening up, and you really saw who was, working for the system, it would really be jaw-dropping, I'm sure, But also, of course, the more famous somebody is, like, somebody who's a household word like an Alex Jones or something, is far more likely to be sort of part of the show, I think, And not that I'm expressing absolute certainty about that. I mentioned Alex Jones, but there's, how much of this whole thing of banning Alex Jones and so on and so forth is real, and how much of all of this is some kind of agitprop?
Exactly. One of the things we were talking about, we talked about a couple times. I've talked about it with Horace on This Week in White Genocide, and we talked about it on Paranormies last night, is that if Alex Jones is, really being banned and deplatformed and all this, really bad things, and oh my God, it's so horrible.
Why is he?
Well, that was my second point. My first point is, has he been kicked off any of his payment processors? And the answer to that is no. So he's still able to collect funds, which people like myself have been deplatformed from stuff like, Patreon. They shut down Patreon once we started using that. We've been kicked off PayPal multiple times. But Alex Jones still takes credit cards via whatever. And now like you said, he's enjoyed this wave of popularity. He's got an app that's been downloaded more than 6 million times. And his name is more in the, in normie news than it ever has been ever. So I don't know that this is a deplatforming as it is sort of a re-platforming of sorts,
Well, I'm very glad that you share my suspicions, because all kinds of people that I, still tend to respect, they buy into this whole sort of theater, and I'm very, very suspicious about the whole thing. But of course, now you mentioned all the things they did to fuck with you, like the payment processors and all that, right? But
sure,
they did all that quietly, right? They didn't give you any publicity. They just quietly flicked whatever switch to screw you, right? They didn't put you on the evening news, while screwing.
Right. Right. Alex Jones has been on every major news channel because of this. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, and it's blown up into this huge thing, where there are some people on the right who are, their take on this is like, oh, well, Alex Jones, even though he was, the kooky water filter salesman and the pill, he sold his pills, super male vitality and colloidal silver and all that other crap. I'm not saying I haven't bought any of that as a meme. It was just a meme, just so you guys know it was a meme. But he literally came out of nowhere, in public access radio, and turned into this huge. Up until recently, he was one of the largest sources of news for large groups of the American. So I don't know. He had a lot of pull. Now he's got a lot more. He's got a lot more. Not coverage. What's the word I'm looking for? But yeah, it's like that. He's out there a lot more. More people know who Alex Jones is now, and they probably know about the gay frogs now. It's not just a joke on the internet anymore. Like, people have seen this, and I don't know. I don't know if this is a way that they're trying to like discredit conspiracy theory even further, or if there's that too.
Well,
you guys. This is Jake. Sorry, I do want to interject a tiny bit because I'm somebody who actually did like Alex Jones and kind of still finds him entertaining. But I think that imagine being somebody like Alex Jones, or imagine a Johnny Monoxide who starts becoming really popular. Now, this is my take based on my own research and experience. I believe that if Johnny Monoxide became incredibly popular, there would be a point where he would be formally approached by the Secret Services, the Mossad, operatives, whatever, and be given an offer he couldn't refuse. That's based on my own research.
That's possible, but it's also possible that you're inverting the chronology, that they approach you and then they make you famous, right? I mean, that's
Absolutely.
the legend. That's the legend of Faust, I guess. It's
I honestly think it's a little more. It's a little of each of that story. Because he did have that underground, and I don't know, maybe they did start him off in a basement, radio studio, so that the story could be more realistic, or maybe they approached him once he started getting some sort of internet success. But he did get really popular really fast. He blew up. And my take on that is, if he was really telling the absolute truth about everything and it was really exposing the government, he would actually be dead. I mean, those kind of people don't actually,
Touche.
No, he's great. Alex Jones is one of the, like, when I was in my Adam Kokesh phase, I was listening to Alex Jones. I was listening to Freeman Fly and Alan Watt, the crazy Scottish Canadian dude who got me, his show's called Breaking Through the Matrix. And it's like the almost woke side of being woke. Like, you know what I mean? It's like they're still kind of gatekeeping that, where they'll say the globalists, like Alex Jones won't say, the Jewish banking cartel. He'll say globalists.
Mm-hmm. He's a firewall.
Right. And these people, these guys are the same way. Like, they want to talk about all these things, but they won't get as far, the reptilian shape-shifting, the blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's a little too far there, David Icke. But, bring it back a little bit. But, you know what I mean? These guys, yeah. So they'll get very close, but they won't. So they keep people in kind of like an almost woke, where they think, and I think it's even worse because it gives them this sense of almost like a I don't know, like a superiority complex or something. Like they believe something that, and the thing is they're still not, seeing it for what it really is.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's how they get suckered into believing stuff like QAnon.
Yeah, that seems like nonsense. But but at key moments, somebody like that will throw out some disinfo. But then, meanwhile, they are telling the truth about some things. It's a very complex thing to look at. But it occurred to me also that if somebody had a plot to poison you, and they say, "Hey, Johnny, come to our this party, and it's a banquet, and there's all your favorite foods there." A lot of the food could be very good food. They only need to lace, one of the dishes with poison, maybe your favorite dessert, strawberry cheesecake or whatever it is. I mean, they lace that with poison and they know you're going to eat that and have seconds. And, the fact that all the rest of the food at the banquet was really good food,
No, I totally get what you're saying. But yeah, the thing about Alex is he does present some of the stuff that is actual factual information. Like, that's one of the things that people think he got deplatformed for, is the fact that he's talking about a false flag in Syria again coming this week. And, that's something that they said that, the British have intel that there's going to be a gas attack, and this will be like the 7th time that, supposedly Assad used gas. And so Alex Jones, actually,
people for some reason.
Right. What is it about these Jews and gassings? Anyways, like every time somebody bad does something, because it was, didn't Saddam Hussein gas people too?
He gassed some Kurds, I think.
He gassed the Kurds. That's right. He gassed the Kurds. He just like Adolf Hitler gassed my booby. It's like it's the same.
Except
and then you fall back.
He really did gas some Kurds. I don't think
Sure.
the Germans did gas anybody.
Right. And the Allies gassed there.
Yeah. Of course, the Western military, the U.S. military is constantly gassing and napalming, bombing people. And
guys, so this is. I'd like to back up. So great conversation. I'd like to back off a bit and focus on something that I think Jonathan is concerned with, and Johnny might be able to answer. So Johnny and I being kind of, similar politically, so we have a particular, goal, which is to preserve, our ethnic groups, white majorities, whatever. Jonathan's mainly concerned with truth. Now, obviously I'm friends with Jonathan, and I too am concerned with truth. So what is the extent to which this problem with truth or shills or agents is going to prevent Johnny and I from reaching our goals? And I mean, what am I trying to focus on here? I mean, Johnny is concerned with truth and kind of identitarian goals, so we have that in common. Jonathan is mainly focused on the truth. So how can we bring this podcast to kind of a culmination of, like, how do these things collide? How do they clash? If shills introduce disinformation into our movement, Johnny and me, that could easily destroy our movement. And I think that's the goal.
Where the rubber hits the road and a lot of this stuff is all of these Islamophobic narratives. And what I find horrifying is that people who at least proclaim to have, an ethno-national viewpoint like you guys, they glom on to these Islamophobic narratives like you wouldn't believe. I mean, now Red Ice Radio, for example, has had some good stuff. I mean, they did a very good interview maybe with Forisson or Nicholas Kollerstrom on the gas chamber problem in Auschwitz and all this. They've had some very good segments, but Red Ice Radio is totally into this Muslim rape epidemic narrative, which, as far as I can tell, Johnny, I mean, I don't know if you've looked into this, it doesn't have any real factual basis. I mean, in fact, as far as I can tell...
You're saying Rotherham and all that Rotherham stuff?
Oh, Rotherham, I think, seems really happened, yeah, though I don't think it's of great... It doesn't have anything to do with Islam, but the stuff like Cologne, I don't think that really happened.
Now,
Now Rotherham, that you have some
Now-
criminal gang that is predominantly these of Pakistani origin that was doing that stuff. That is true, I assume.
So, now, again, this is Jake's view here, but my view of the Rotherham thing is that it's not really Islam that was the motivating factor that caused it to come to happen. It's more of the
criminals, Jake.
I'm not saying I disagree, but there is a ethnic or racial element to the solidarity of these gangs. That's where the identitarian element comes in.
But that's true of the Italian mafia, Sicilian mafia, and other groups. Yeah. But whatever.
Implying that the Italian mafia isn't really the Jewish mafia with Italian hitmen.
Well, we could go there, but I would say that whatever crimes the Italian mafia is doing has nothing to do with Roman Catholicism. It's just that these are criminals of a certain background, and they're nominally Catholics. I mean, this gang in Rotherham are nominally Muslims. I mean, I don't think that you'd find them in the mosque, for services, probably, but But they blew that up. There's probably something somewhat real there that they're exaggerating the significance of. With these sorts of things like the Cologne thing, that's New Year's Eve 2015. Mm-hmm. That appears to be a completely synthetic event. I mean, the main witness to that his testimony went viral is this guy named Ivan Jurcevic, I think. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation. He was a Croatian ex-boxer or something who was a doorman at some hotel. And he gives this testimony about what he saw. But the more you look into, but this guy, Jurcevic, is a classic crisis actor. He's got a page on IMDb and has a reel of his B or C movie acting highlights on YouTube. And meanwhile, there are people who are... But the whole story doesn't make much sense. I mean, hundreds of women got sexually assaulted, and it produced zero visuals. But everybody was talking about this like it was real. I mean, anyway, I looked into this and became pretty convinced that none of it was real. And you look into a lot of these narratives about the Muslims as rapists, and they all seem to originate from certain places. Like there's this place called the Gatestone Institute. That's some Zionist outfit that puts out all these weird stories. But here, look, I'll tell you something about all this Muslim rape epidemic narrative. I got a friend here, in Spain, who he's Spanish, but his mother is German, and he grew up speaking German with his mother. He's bilingually fluent in German. And, after I wrote a very sarcastic article that I got attacked, and UNS did publish it. The title was "The Muslim Rape Army is Coming to Get You." You can read it if you're interested. And all of these typical UNS readers were attacking the hell out of me under the article. It's very interesting to look at this. But and I only became aware that this Ivan Jurcevic was a crisis actor after writing that article. This friend of mine also, after I wrote the article, we were talking about all this, and it was, and he said to me a while after that, he said, I was at some various parties full of German people trying to talk about this whole Muslim rape epidemic, and like you just start talking to some woman who is visiting from Germany and say, "Oh, isn't it terrible that German girls are getting raped right, left, and center, in Germany, and they all just looked at him just like he was crazy, and they said they just didn't know what the hell he was talking about. They just say, well, what are you talking about? There's no.
Well, to be fair, you could ask your average American about all the shootings in Chicago, and most of your average Americans would be like, "What shootings in Chicago?" Because they don't really know.
Well, we don't live there. And I lived in Chicago, and I didn't live on the South Side, and I didn't have to deal with the shootings.
Sure. But I mean, like I said, most Americans don't even know, you know, like to even if you ask them about, you know, any sort of crime statistic.
Okay, but the issue isn't that there isn't some amount of crime. I mean, I'm not claiming there's no crime.
No, but what I'm saying is so the disproportionate amount of shootings in Chicago, which is like something that nobody in, you know, no average American not only doesn't talk about, but they don't even know about because they don't talk about it on the news. It's kind of like they don't talk about bombings in Lebanon because it happens every 25 minutes, you know, so they stop talking about it. Same thing with Chicago. There was one weekend recently where there was like 46 murders. Nobody, you know, why is nobody out in the streets protesting that? Because it's not talked about. And I'm going to say that the same thing is happening in Germany with that. Of course, they're not covering that in the news. Why would they? Because that would be racist. Same reason why the police in Rotherham didn't want to talk about the Pakistani rape gang in Rotherham because that would be racist towards the Pakis.
Or maybe they were screwing the girls themselves, too.
And maybe the cops were involved in it as well. I'm not saying the cops weren't, and I'm not saying that cops are good, and I'm not saying that deep down in my heart I'm not still an all cops are bastards kind of guy. But, you know, without the police, we have total chaos. That's a story.
Well, the Muslims are terrorists meme. I mean, once you understand 9/11, and then you just look at all these other events, you start realizing that the whole Muslims are terrorists meme is basically a hoax, right?
Well, it is a hoax and it isn't a hoax in as much as like the Mossad and the CIA use Muslim terrorists to do things.
Well, they're patsies. They're part of a patsy milieu. They don't have any real independent existence, I don't think. I mean, I don't think ISIS has any real independent existence.
ISIS, as far as I'm concerned, it's still Israel stupid. That's ISIS. You know, ISIS is Israeli trained. They have American weapons. They have American vehicles. I mean, they showed up one week with a whole, you know, fleet of brand new Toyota Tundras. What? How does that happen? So, no, ISIS is a proxy army for Israel. That's not the United States, because the United States is Israel's largest proxy army. But as far as now,
the Muslim rape epidemic in Germany and stuff. I did as much research as I could reasonably do, trying to convince myself that this corresponded to something real. And I am pretty sure that this is just that it's not very real. You know, Paul Joseph Watson goes on and on about Sweden too, trying to tell you that Sweden is some crime-ridden hellhole. Didn't he have some offer that he would send you to Malmo if you were willing to go to a so-called no-go zone? And I don't know. It's all this.
I don't remember. With him, I remember is him talking.
Paul Joseph Watson is
chill. We all agree on that.
Yes.
Well, okay, but okay. Let's step back from this the specific question. I mean, there's a basic litmus test here, isn't there? I mean, if you are like Jake, you were talking about, you know, these ethno-nationalist, white nationalist views that you want the white countries to remain dominated by their founding population. I actually tend to agree with that as a common sense proposition.
Yes.
But
we have
look,
a convert. Yes, that's so great.
Well, you know, but look, that's just a standard conservative viewpoint that there's no need for any revolutionary change to the makeup of society, you know. But the point, what was my point here? It was okay. No, this is the point. If you are a white nationalist, you don't want a whole bunch of Arabs from the Middle East coming into your country because you're a white nationalist, right? But you don't want a bunch of Hindus from India coming into your country because you're a white nationalist. You don't want a bunch of Asiatic Buddhists coming in from Southeast Asia. Why? Because you're a white nationalist, right?
Right.
I mean, you know, but when it all gets channeled into this question of Islam, why would that be, right? If you want America to remain majority white, or even you just look askance at all the immigration. So when the narrative is always revolving around Islam and Muslims, what is going on here? Because that's a Zionist narrative. I mean, it is
a Zionist narrative.
Exactly. No, we agree here. While you guys were talking, I was thinking of, I have 3 questions that I think may or may not be interesting to you. But number one, if somebody is trying to push Islamophobia or focusing on or exaggerating Islamic crimes, who would that be and why would they do it? Number two,
well, it's obvious.
People like Johnny, yes, that's obvious. But number two, is the identitarian movements like Johnny and I are on board with, are we going to be undermined by buying into these false narratives? And
I think so.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
anyway,
but look, you got this shill, right? Paul Joseph Watson going on and on and on about how Sweden is a crime-ridden hellhole because they let in X number of refugees. I mean, now I'm not saying the situation is perfect, but Sweden is not a crime-ridden hellhole.
Stockholm has since the migrant crisis in Europe started. Stockholm has risen quite quickly on the.
That's possible.
On the like the crime and rape.
It's possible, but of course the problem is that even if the crime rate doubles in Sweden, it's going from such a low level. I mean the problem is that if you live, you don't live in Columbus, Ohio, but if you live in some town that has a moderate amount of crime, but just sort of a normal place, and you read some website maintained in Russia or someplace that just goes on and on and on about how the town you live in is some total Mad Max dystopia, doesn't that kind of, I mean, because that's the situation that the average middle-of-the-road Swede is in, right? I mean, because if you read Breitbart and you listen to Paul Joseph Watson, you think Sweden is God knows what, right? But the reality of it is,
right, but the thing is, the other thing is with Paul Joseph Watson is he's doing the same thing as the 9/11 Truth Movement. Is he's talking about this without saying like who's doing it and why. Who is pushing? If there is, and there is a major influx.
But there is handlers. It's not to be clear. I'm not taking a position on whether it was a good idea to let in the numbers of refugees that they let in. I'm not taking a position on that, and I'm not saying Angela Merkel should have welcomed, should have got on the TV and said that.
Why would you?
Germany.
In a country whose national pastime and basically religion is pork and alcohol, would you allow in millions of people who are religiously opposed to pork and alcohol?
Well, they do have a demographic situation where, for whatever reason, white European women have an extremely low fertility rate. I mean, I think the average.
I wonder why that is, though. Why do you think that is? I don't think that's due to generations of being told that the world is overpopulated. We're overpopulating the world. Don't have babies. Have a career instead.
Well, that's possible. It's also a decline of traditional religious culture, and religious structure.
Sure. And who do you think's behind all that? Who do you think's behind all the atheist movement and the feminist movement and the all these same?
But there is a general faction that says that if we can't convince people to have children, then we'll import some people, and because they don't.
It's the same people. It's the same people that are doing both things.
Right.
That are pushing the narrative. The same people that are pushing hold on a second. The same people that are pushing the narrative of don't have a baby, have a job. Babies are germ factories and you don't want that. Have a puppy instead. Are the same people that are pushing, the whole, the fertility is low. We should bring in more brown people instead. White people are dying off.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's the exact same people, to be honest. I mean, there's overlaps probably. I'm not sure.
It really is.
But I mean, if you are a But if you are in the business of whatever business, and you're in construction and you build houses, I mean, and there are no children, who are you gonna, in a few years, you're gonna sell the houses to? I mean, there is this sort of general. It's funny. I was talking.
It's kind of clever how it all fits together, isn't it? How
it really is.
The same groups produce a cultural environment where white women don't have children, and then for business purposes, you need to invite in non-white people to flood the country and produce workers and consumers, even though, of course, they're really not able to be high-tech workers and produce high-tech technology. But regardless, I mean, and here's one thing that Jonathan, a dear friend of mine, probably doesn't understand: the existential angst and desire to not have your people go extinct. I mean, I would frankly rather that Germany or Sweden, or
I understand
I'm actually Swedish, I would rather have Norway and Sweden become a desolate wasteland with no people on it than to be repopulated by Arabs. I mean, I don't hate Arabs.
100% agree.
I would rather have Norway be a desolate wasteland with like one guy sitting in a log cabin with one last dog and a child, roasting marshmallows in this desolate wasteland, than have it repopulated by Arabs. That's
Somalis.
But if you're part of
rational, it's simply
but if you're part of the economic elite, you might do the calculation and just decide that.
Well,
who's to say? Look, so the economic elite are correct to be doing this, though, is what you're saying. It's okay.
I'm not saying that. I'm just trying.
No,
to
we know we know what's going on. We know, and we know why, and it's because, I mean, the people pushing this agenda are pushing this agenda against white people, and it's the ancient battle.
There is some of that, but some of that is just that they're just pursuing their own. To some extent, they're just pursuing their own economic interests. I mean, if you're I mean, well, who is the typical member of the what we call the economic elite? I mean, if you're 50, 60 years old and you're the
the economic elite in what country? Actually, well, it depends. The United States, it's like 60% Jewish. Okay, so overwhelmingly Jewish.
But even if you're not Jewish and you think,
right?
Well,
but
I'm going to live for another 20 years.
In a country like the United States. In a country like the United States, hold on a second. In a country like the United States, that is 2% Jewish, and yet its elite are 65% of the elite are Jews. I mean, like, what does that tell you?
Yeah, I mean,
there has been a serious ethnic networking going on, yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going on. It's ethnic networking, nepotism nobody does nepotism like the Jews do.
Yeah, I have to say this is true, Jonathan and Johnny. But, I'm sitting in a cabin built by part of the old economic elite, Anglo-Saxons. I mean, it's a beautiful cabin, and I see paintings on the wall right now, and they had children, and Teddy Roosevelt himself, if you read some of his writings, talked about the necessity of the white race producing lots of children to avoid being overwhelmed by the other peoples. And of course, Spengler also talked about this and how we would probably inevitably die out. But the economic elite in the United States, there was a turnover, but the economic, cultural, and political elite. In the 60s, it was kind of the nail in the coffin. The Anglo-Saxon elite was replaced by the Jewish elite. And strangely, that's also when the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 was passed.
But even the people who aren't ethnically Jews have been imbued with a certain, I guess you could call the term anti-racialist ideology that everybody's the same anyway, I guess, and maybe they really don't
that
believe
all
it.
started back with Boaz. Whenever
Boaz, anthropologist.
Yeah, that's when anti-racism really started, was when he kind of shook up the whole anthropology world.
Yeah, I guess. I'd have to look at that. And
Have you read any of Culture Critique by Dr. Kevin McDonald?
I have read big portions of it. I don't think I sat down and read the whole thing. Now, Kevin McDonald
is really, yeah.
Now, Kevin McDonald is a perfect example of bounded awareness. I mean, he can't see through any false flag of any sort. So he, so he's got his whole thing about Jews and the evolutionary psychology and their group strategy. Where they may well be on the right track on all of that, but then he can't. And he just never. There's no sign that he sees through any of the false flags.
Well, I never really got a chance to talk to him about that. I did find out whether or not he had seen a ghost, though, and he has not seen a ghost.
Seen a ghost?
Yeah, that's one of the Paranormies things. Is it's a joke. It's like we'll be doing something and somebody will text me and be like, "I just seen a ghost." I'm like, okay. So that's like, because I'm the Paranormies guy, we talk about ghosts and conspiracies, a lot of occult stuff and a lot of ghost stories.
Have you
guys believe, actually, hold on. Do you guys believe in the paranormal at all?
I do. This is Jake. Jake, okay, so Johnny, I do, but unfortunately, because I'm hyper-rationalist, I personally haven't seen them, but I have multiple friends and family members who have seen ghosts, and I even have an atheist materialist friend whose own mother knew exactly when he was hurt in Alaska in the fishing industry, and also knew when he was hurt another time. So he can't deny that the paranormal exists. So I'm a hyper-rationalist who actually believes in the paranormal because I've heard too many reports that it's
there are things
true.
we just don't really know about. But here's a thought that I had that it could be another way of framing the whole question, which is I'm thinking of there's a massive cathedral not very far from where I live. It's got all these columns and buttresses outside, and all these supporting elements, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what happens if you take a structure like that and you start one by one removing all of the supporting elements, right? I mean, any structure, not just the cathedral. Any of these things, you remove. You say, well, there's this column here, and I don't see that it's really doing anything, so we could remove this column, and maybe the building just keeps standing, right? And then, we'll remove this arch, and eventually you remove enough supporting elements, and some cracks start appearing in various places in the wall because there's strains in the structure that weren't there, right, before. Because maybe the building is over-engineered and you could start removing different parts of it. And but eventually, if you remove enough of the supporting structural elements of the building and don't replace them with anything, the entire structure will collapse, correct?
Right. Yes.
Now that's not even the equivalent of claiming that the structure is so wonderful and that everything is so beautiful. It's just saying that if you systematically remove the supporting elements of the structure, eventually, and replace them with nothing at all, eventually it will collapse. I wrote the piece of writing that I'm most proud of, I think, is the one, which I originally wrote it. I wanted to write a critique of these sorts of aggressive atheists like Richard Dawkins, the horseman of the new atheism or something. I mean, Dawkins wrote a book called The God Delusion, and Christopher Hitchens wrote another book called. There's four of these guys that somehow call
it's the four horsemen of the atheist apocalypse. Yeah.
Yeah, they paint themselves in heroic.
Right. And everybody who's ever read any of their quotes. Oh no, he's one of it. Sam Harris. It's Dawkins. Yeah. It's Hitchens and
Denton or something. Yeah.
Who's the fourth? Oh shit.
Denton, I think.
Is it Denton? Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's your four horsemen of the atheist apocalypse. And most people who have read, at least one or two of their quotes have, turned into your typical, what we call a level one atheist, the whole, if God real, why bad thing happen?
Dawkins's position, you see, I'm not really a believer or anything, but it's, I was fascinated by just the superficial analysis of religion and its structure and what its role in society is. Now, you see, but the thing is that if you start, it finally occurred to me that it's like the building. I mean, if you start systematically removing the supporting elements of the structure and replace them with nothing at all, eventually the structure collapses, right? And religion was part of the structure, I mean, all of these things that the radical feminist PC types talk about, whether it's patriarchy, white supremacy, and whatever else, it isn't this. It isn't that you're the conservative viewpoint isn't necessarily that these things don't have their warts, right? The issue is that if you remove the supporting elements of a structure and replace them with nothing, eventually the structure collapses, right?
Beautifully said. Very, very beautiful. Conservatives don't care about warts. We care about the overall beauty of the structure from a distance, right? We're willing to put up with warts and termites in the foundations because we want the structure to exist.
Right, but saying that you can't, remove the supporting elements and replace them with nothing without the structure eventually collapsing is not actually equivalent to saying that everything about the structure is perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool how we've gone from talking about, conspiracy theories and how the alt-right is full of possibly shills or agents to getting into like the actually kind of a epistemological or ontological view of conservatism. But you're the leader, John. So how is this relating to? So we have Johnny Monoxide on, who's one of my favorite people in the alt-right because as you've seen, he has a very open epistemology where he's open to false flags and the idea that there are actors who are trying to destroy the ability of people to see the truth, but he's also alt-right. He's also identitarian. So this is Jonathan of Heresy Central's opportunity to really get some questions answered about what the alt-right is about and how it comes together with epistemology and false flags and truth and people trying to make the masses believe in obviously absurdly false things. So how do we wrap this thing up?
Well,
but I'm not trying to rush things. I'm just trying to direct it toward this incredible synergy where we have Jonathan Revusky, the Heresy Central founder, who cares about truth. We have Johnny Monoxide, who also believes that false flags are real and that there are actors who want to mystify the masses with crazy magic tricks to keep them away from the truth. Anyway, I'm just trying to direct it to this culmination of like how, what Jonathan can get out of this conversation.
Well, there are various big questions. I mean, it occurs to me, to push the analogy of structural elements and structural failure. The classic conservative, I guess, looks at these sorts of radical feminists, and all of these Frankfurt School people, that they're trying to destroy society, which could be an interpretation of what they're doing. They're systematically undermining all of the things that keep the structure standing, right?
Absolutely.
Of course, but the other question, right, and it's understandable that you hate them, but maybe these people are just kind of so benighted that they think that they can remove one element after another and it doesn't matter because they don't understand that the structure will collapse.
Okay,
you see,
so I think I think the average intelligence person who believe in that shit think that it's benign and they can replace these elements and get progress. I think the elite,
but I mean, if
the
the birth rate,
I think they know. Yes, I think the masterminds who came up with this shit knew what they were doing. I don't think
I 100% agree
useful
with
idiots.
But why do they want the structure to collapse? Just for the sheer joy of it?
There's a school of thought that, that the actual Messiah will come back when the world is at its absolute worst.
But these people aren't religious at this point in time, I don't think.
The Orthodox ones are.
Oh, but they're not the ones calling the shot. I can't.
You don't think so? You don't think that they're religious there at the top back there at all?
That the high-level Zionists are acting out of some real religious. Sometimes they want to make you think they are, but I don't buy it. No,
I think I think it's about 50-50 at the top levels with these people.
See, this is one of those questions that does intrigue me. It's true that there's a continuity in a sense. I mean, you can see elements of this sort of Judaic thinking, this Talmudic Judaism in current day Jewish culture. It's true, I suppose. But on the other hand, to think that you can, that you're going to understand Bibi Netanyahu by understanding the Talmud or Talmudic Judaism, I think is finally, I don't think it's a fruitful path. I mean, it's a question that intrigues me. This whole issue of history, and you get some. I'm not talking about you guys, but you get some of the like there's some of these white nationalists in Europe. They'll start ranting about the siege of Vienna of whatever year and Charles Martel and all of these other things that happened in European history. And I have to say that I don't think that the migrant crisis currently in Europe has anything to do with the siege of Vienna or Charles Martel. I mean, any more than if there were some obnoxious British tourists on the beach here, that this has anything to do with the Battle of the Spanish Armada. I mean, it's like, it's true that on a certain level, having a broad historical understanding of how we got here is important, but there's also this kind of middlebrow history maven sort of thing where they're connecting all these dots in these weird ways. I mean, it's true that current day England evolved in some continuous fashion from the England of Shakespeare, but you're not going to understand current day England or Britain that much by reading Shakespeare, or you're not going to understand current day Spain that much by reading Don Quixote. So my feeling is that most of this is not completely, but it's mostly a distraction. All of this getting, and the Zionists push this clash of civilizations narrative and blah 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 blah. And I think a lot of this stuff is a kind of distraction. Finally, in the end of the day, I mean, so thinking that you're going to understand, the current day Zionists by understanding Talmudic Judaism from the Middle Ages or something is, I mean, you might see certain things. I don't know. It's complex, but I don't think these people are active. I don't. They do have some will to power, and they want to run things. And
sure.
So, Jonathan. Sorry, Johnny. So, I want to give the final word to, we've been an hour and a half now, so I want to give the final word to Johnny Monoxide. But, I just wanted to interject, and this is, something that Johnny himself might want to hear. Now, I used to be somebody as, materialistic and, rationalistic as, Jonathan Revusky of Heresy Central used to be. It's just that by pure strange experience, I kind of realized that this may not be true. So I'm going to make some claims here, which Johnny might find interesting and maybe he wants to follow up on sometime. But I have an ex-friend who I eventually made a non-friend just because he was so evil. But this poor guy was a kind of a identitarian like we are, but he got involved with a Jewish family. I won't say too many details, who was also part of the Illuminati. And he wanted to make a lot of money, so he went out to some western state. I won't even get near the actual location, but this family had a torture chamber in their basement. These are people who actually do perform satanic rituals, and they actually believe they're effective. Now it doesn't make sense to if you're hyper-rationalistic. It's hard to believe that these people actually believe that satanic rituals have, an effect, but they think it does.
This is one of the things. Now, to interject, this is something we've said on the Paranormies many, many times: is just because you don't believe it, and just because you don't believe in it, doesn't mean that the people that are doing it don't.
Exactly.
I don't know for sure what they believe. I have to admit.
But the thing is regardless of whether you understand what they believe or not or whatever, they're doing these things. These people do these things in a ritualistic fashion. They are rituals. They use certain dates and numbers and things for, whatever reason. Now, whether you've looked into it or not, or whether you believe it or not is irrelevant, because the ones that are doing it actually do believe this. And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. You don't have to believe in magic as long as they do.
I guess that's true. I mean, the thing is that in all of what I said before, I was just sort of giving my vague impressions. I wasn't expressing absolute conviction about the question either. My instinct is that you're not going to understand what the Zionists like Netanyahu are up to by studying Talmudic Judaism, say, but I'm not expressing absolute conviction about that. Okay. Well, I mean, you might see some aspects of it, but you're going to understand certain aspects. You see, there's continuity historically, so you'll understand certain aspects of British culture by, reading Shakespeare or something, but you're not going to understand that much either. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so I'm not saying that that there's no relationship. It's just, but that's just a vague sense that I have that I'm sharing. I mean, it's not. My own views have evolved so much over time that I might change my view on that somewhat. I mean, I have heard. I have heard a lot. I mean, there's this whole question of these Freemasons, and I don't know, Johnny, have you done any research on the Freemasons? I mean, I find that whole question.
Yes, we have a whole bunch of stuff. We've been talking about doing Freemasons episodes for a while, and I have a whole bunch of stuff on it. We've had Frater X, who is a former high-level Mason and a member of several other esoteric orders on the show a couple times. So, yeah, we've dipped into it a little bit. I want to get into it a lot more. There's the people that are like, oh, it's the Freemasons. And then there's the people that are like, oh, well, it's the Freemasons, but just call them Jews. There's a lot of.
But it's not exactly symmetrical with being Jewish either.
Sure. No. I know. I'm just using that, but that's an actual.
But it seems that on the very rank and file level, the Freemasonry looks kind of benign,
Right. It's just a men's club where guys go to get discounts on like paper products and like work stuff.
Yeah, because I mentioned it to some guy who I had very very little contact with. And we were talking about this kind of stuff because he wrote me, and we got into some conversation, and somehow the Freemasons came up, and I asked him, "Did you know anything about this?" Because I'm not somebody who represents that he knows about stuff that he doesn't know much about, and the Freemasons is something that I don't actually know very much about. I would like to, but so I mentioned the Freemasons to this guy, and he said to me, "Oh, well, I was in the Freemasons, but I haven't been going there, and I think I let my membership lapse." Or he said something about how he was, but the thing is, he was just there at that rank and file level, and where it's just some kind of totally benign thing, as far as I can tell him, because this guy, I can tell you, wasn't neck deep in any conspiracies
Sure.
or anything, So there's that level, but then, similar
Right.
stuff.
That's your like average, what they call like the porch mason. Like your average, just guy who's a mason.
But these Judaic things like B'nai B'rith and so forth, and on the very low rank and file level are also, I think, pretty benign. But you get higher up, and
They're sacrificing babies and stuff, yeah.
Well, I don't know if they're sacrificing babies, but I mean, but there is some conspiratorial stuff going on, and yeah, there may be continuity historically with things that existed way back in the Middle Ages. So here I am contradicting myself. I mean, my ideas are in flux. It's just that people go on about this stuff and they say, oh yeah, well these refugees are showing up, and it's a continuation of the siege of Vienna of 1687 or whenever it was. And I just feel that's, that's kind of...
So we've gone on longer than we expected, but that's
fine.
Yeah,
we've been talking up a storm.
I would just like to bring up a couple points and let Johnny have the final say. But now, Jonathan, you brought up so the one thing you're absolutely correct on is that most humans, the masses, the average man and woman, like monocausal explanations. My mother is the same way. She can't focus on more than one cause at a time. Like, I tell her, well, maybe Israel's involved in 9/11, then that freaks her out. Then I say, well, Saudi Arabia. Like, most human beings can't tolerate multi-causes. So the average man and woman throughout history has liked simple explanations. So, the fact that Jonathan and Johnny and myself can even contemplate multiple explanations for historical events or directions is unusual. So it's understandable that the average man and woman wants a single cause. It's the Illuminati, it's the Masons, it's the Freemasons, it's the Jews. But that's not the way human history works. It's not that simple. And so imagine the position Johnny and I, and let's say, Richard Spencer, unless he's a shill. I know that Jonathan thinks that Richard Spencer is a shill. Johnny can maybe put that in his wrap-up if he thinks Richard Spencer is a shill.
I never expressed absolute certainty about such questions.
But anyway.
But if somebody's a household word, he's very likely to be,
Maybe not. But anyway, so my main last point is that most human beings want a simple explanation. But life is not that simple. A lot of human behavior is biological. If you take two identical twins, one is a schizophrenic, the other identical twin, even if he's raised in a different household, well, there's a 50% chance he'll become schizophrenic. A lot of human behavior is genetic, which is why identitarians want a somewhat homogeneous society. But religion, the way you're raised, the town you grew up in, all that makes a beautiful society or an ugly society. So Jonathan's expressions about how, he's concerned about identitarians or alt-right focusing on these simple explanations that are probably fed by the Zionists, like, Islamophobia, which I admit, I actually have Islamic friends. One guy from Iraq who actually knew Saddam Hussein, but that's another story. But it's true that these simplistic narratives are suspect, and you should totally steer away from them. So I'm going to turn it over to Johnny Monoxide, our very distinguished guest for the final wrap up. And Jonathan, you feel free to interject, but let's go for the wrap up.
Yeah, that's a lot of things to talk about right there. As far as shills in the movement, you're always going to have that. You're always going to have somebody. You're going to have some sort of an interloper. You're going to have. There's people who think that David Duke is a Fed. Of course, you just said that. It's the possibility. You think there's a possibility that Richard Spencer might be a shill. As far as shills, what?
That was Jonathan's view. That was not Jake's view. That was Jonathan Revusky's view.
Yeah, Jonathan, what would give you that? Just the fact that he's a household name, that there's some sort of way that he's.
Well, there's some various video of him where he seems to be doing the fascist salute, and it seems like some kind of weird agitprop. Actually, somebody who and I've been publishing some of his work is Dave Martin, DC Dave, who did some great stuff on the death of Thomas Merton, who seems to like he was assassinated, and James Forrestal. Dave Martin is convinced that Richard Spencer is a shill.
By a shill, what exactly do you mean?
Well, it's just sort of working for the show, there's, maybe his handlers. Another one that I'm more sure of even would be Tommy Robinson in England.
I actually agree with that.
Well, we all agree there, buddy.
Now, Jake, what was the first thing in your little wrap up there? You said something at the very beginning, and it was something I wanted to go back to. I can't remember exactly what it was.
I was talking about the fact that the average man and woman who's, the average person has an average IQ. The average man and woman wants a simplistic explanation. They want a monocausal explanation. And that Johnny and I and Jonathan, the host of the show, all agree that that's not a good way to go. But of course, Johnny and I are faced with, we're trying to lead a movement of people who are average. So, but it's true that the average person wants a simple explanation, but that's not really actually true. I think that might be what you were looking at.
It is, yeah, that's what it was. They do want the simplest explanation for things. And I think that's something that they've had to take away from us because, we're just handed very simple explanations for everything now.
Yeah.
Even down to 500 people were shot and 40 people were killed in Vegas, but the answer is we don't know. All right. Tonight on Dancing with the Stars, the answer is literally 3 words. We don't know, and America accepts that. That's where we're at now. Like simplest explanation for everything. They want, the Jew, like you said, the Jews, the Bilderbergs, the Trump supporters, the whatever it is. It's
the Illuminati.
The Illuminati is a big one because that gets people who are even, I guess, they're like I said earlier, like the fake woke, because they say Illuminati when they really mean, Jewish banking cartel, or when they really mean, Jewish media cartel. That's what they really mean to say when they say that. But it's, it's a big thing. It's like Alex Jones with the bankers, and the globalists.
The globalists.
Yes, the globalists. It was the bankers for a long time. When I first started listening to Alex Jones, it was the bankers. And then it became the globalists, as the globalism became huge. Globo homo gayplex, as we like to call it. It's 24 hours a day, haptic vibrating dildos up your butt. That's what we have here. And you are forced to accept it. And if you don't accept it, but if you don't accept it with open arms and being enraptured by having this done to you, then you are in fact a racist bigot who wants to gas 6 million Jews. So,
yep, absolutely.
Yep, that's what it is. They want what do they say? They want your family dead, your children raped, and they laugh about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do have a personal question for Johnny Monoxide since I have him on. So how do you you don't have to answer this if it's going to get you in trouble, but how do you feel of kind of being like, in some sense, the black sheep of the alt-right family who is more open to a conspiracy theory and alternative explanations? How do you personally deal with that? And Jonathan probably enjoyed the answer to this.
I personally don't care what anybody thinks about me.
Okay.
At the end of the day, my kid thinks I'm awesome. My wife thinks I'm awesome. And that's all that matters in my life. So, if what I believe happened on 9/11, if you think that what I believe on 9/11 makes me an absolute crazy person and that you should discount everything I say because of something I believe, because I don't believe, the official story, then, I don't know. That's a little more weird than letting me have my own belief and just, going on with your life.
Right.
The fact that there are people who who think, I mean, look, if you want to believe, and I don't care, like at the Paranormies, we have one or two phrases that are absolute concrete. And one is there's no such thing as coincidence. And two is time travel makes you gay. But other than that, and that's scientific fact. Other than that, like, I'm not going to have somebody on my show and, talk about something and like tear them apart on my show. That's not what my show's about. I want to hear everybody's, different opinion or take on things because, none of us really actually know. We don't know. It's kind of like the whole flat earth, round earth, quote unquote conspiracy that's been debunked both ways. And, to me, it's fun. I don't care either way. Like, I don't, and honestly, when people ask me if I'm a flat earther or if I'm a glober or whatever it is, I just kind of laugh because it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I have to go to work. I have to take care of my family. It doesn't matter.
But the flat earth stuff is just promoted by whoever to make people look silly, isn't it? I mean,
sure.
What
sure, but it's
this?
funny. But it's funny and it's fun. And, I don't, but because of that, because I just said that I think it's fun, people are going to think that I'm a weirdo. That's just how it is. And I don't care.
Well,
I don't care being the black sheep. I've always been the black sheep of the family, in my personal life. So why not the alt-right as well?
But you have been in very socially awkward, situations because you've said things that are heretical. And people
socially awkward as much as like what? Like somebody would laugh at me or
get angry at you and start sputtering.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's and that to me is fun.
Well, I've had people who I thought were in a few cases of people I thought were good friends just gradually drift away, and I have no contact with them anymore because they just can't deal with my viewpoints on these various things that we've been talking about, and
that's happened to most of the people in my life. So yeah, it's part of being a heretic is eventually, people either, they believe, they want the official narrative and be part of society, because we live in a society, or they want to, step outside that and see the truth about things, no matter what it is. And, there's a very small minority of us that actually do that. So you got to get used to it. I've gotten used to it. It doesn't bother me. Being a heretic doesn't bother me.
But some of these broken, relationships, it is painful, I find.
Sure. I had a cousin, just like we grew up, he was like, he was like my older brother. And then when I was going through my stoner anarchist phase, we were both divorced at the same time. So like, we would like call each other for emotional support. And then I kind of came back around and, and changed my entire life around, and my whole point of view became more right wing and more focused on what I'm, into now. And, to him, that was horrible, and I was an evil, racist Nazi, who was very fragile. I had a very fragile masculinity. I was afraid of minorities. I was afraid of black people. He even pulled, like, I did some out of context, like, screenshots and just showed them to some friends and asked who sent this text, a man or a woman? And every single person said woman. Because, people have been gaslighted into being this, sort of, anti-racist, anti-white narrative that they are now, that no matter even, all you have to do is be an advocate for whites and you're an evil person. And this is coming from like, my very favorite cousin. So yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah, I know what you mean. But I mean, but then at the same time, he's had the same opportunity I have. He's seen the exact same things I have. He's decided to, he's chosen to not see it and to just not care about it.
Yeah.
You can only send people so many links to so many videos before you're like, whatever.
Well, I mean, just something that I've been thinking about over the last few days is this whole, what Johnny was talking about, this demonization sort of issue. It's one thing to just disagree with somebody or think, they're wrong about whatever. But then there is this whole demonization thing that is, and it's at its strongest with the Holocaust. If you don't believe this narrative, it's not just that you're wrong. They believe in it, and presumably,
yes, you're an evil racist who wants to kill 6 million Jews.
Yeah, simply because you just don't believe their story. You're evil. Sure. But
I don't believe that this woman ate and pooped diamonds for 4 years.
Oh, that one. That's that Zisblatt woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
But finally, what is demonization about, in a sense? I mean, atrocity propaganda is about demonizing people, right? I mean, it's like Saddam Hussein tossed the babies out of the incubators, or the Germans were in First World War were bayoneting the Belgian babies, and all of these. And not to say that no atrocities ever occur, but I mean, but they invent these things. And of course, what I think the meaning of an atrocity finally is that, oh, well, these people bayonet babies, or it relieves you of any. There's no onus on you now to understand that person's viewpoint, right? That person is a monster, right?
Right.
And you see
they had masturbation machines.
Now it's true with the Holocaust. A lot of it is just a financial fraud where they extracted all these reparations. But then there is
of billions of Deutschmarks.
Oh yeah, never stops.
Yeah, that's true. But there's also just the aspect of demonizing the National Socialists to the extent that there's no onus on you to understand their viewpoint at all. And note that understanding their viewpoint is not exactly the same as agreeing with it 100%. I mean, what I find in discussions with people is you suddenly realize that people don't feel that there's any onus on them to understand an opposing viewpoint, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you suggest to them that they should try to understand an opposing viewpoint, they then turn around and suggest that you are insisting that they agree with that viewpoint. You're insisting that I agree with this, which isn't the case. It's simply a case of understanding the viewpoint, right? But finally, it is very dangerous for them if you understand the viewpoint of the German National Socialists of the 1930s. Why? Even understanding why they really didn't like the Jews that much. Even not. It's not a question of agreeing with the Nuremberg laws or things that really did happen and weren't maybe very good, but it's just a question of understanding their viewpoint. But I guess that's what demonization is about, and that's what all of these. That's what this atrocity propaganda is largely about. And demonizing Muslims. Oh, they go to the train station and grope women. And I'm sure that didn't happen. But that you don't have to understand the other person's viewpoint. But just end where we started.
Okay.
It's that. There's the SPLC page of, the hate page, and the point is to demonize you and demonize other people with similar views. Whereas I may or may not agree with everything, with whatever you're saying, but my position was, well, you're a fellow heretic at least, and it's quite interesting to try to understand your viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Jonathan. So we're going to wrap this up now, but I want to ask Jonathan a question since he's the Heresy Central creator. So is your sense that Johnny Monoxide is a shill or agent of Zog or whatever, or do you think that he's?
I never got that impression.
Michael Savage actually said that when I got doxxed really hard in San Francisco and made the major news out west. Savage actually came on and said that I was a Fed. He didn't say I was a shill. He literally said I was a Fed. Yeah.
That's so disappointing. I thought he was the good Jew. Damn it.
He is the good Jew, but I mean, like, every now and then he's
the
retarded.
good Jew.
I mean, Well,
Yeah,
well, none of them are really. I mean, he gets to close the oven on the way in. You know what I mean? He gets in last and pulls the door shut behind him.
I don't.
That's an inside joke. That's an inside joke in the alt-right because we don't really believe that. We don't really believe the Nazis put the Jews in the ovens, but they actually can't own that metaphor. So
I don't know if Jake told you that I'm half Jewish. My father's Jewish, and my background. Oh, you didn't tell me? Yeah. I was brought up to think of myself as a Jew. It's very complex, though.
Really?
So my mother.
When it's on your father's side, how does that work, though?
Huh?
When it's on the father's side, doesn't it work differently, though?
Well, according to the religious law, it is through the mother, and my mother is actually Chinese. You see, so that's So it's hard for me to be a white nationalist because, of course, if I'm half Jewish, half Chinese, you see, I'm a Chaik. You see, but
that's a good one, Chaik.
Yeah. But the funny thing about it is I was brought up to think of myself as a Jew nonetheless, and so I was imbued with all of this Holocaust narrative, from a very early age, and it was very much part of my mental world. I guess I stopped believing it maybe only 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, but the funny thing about it is that it came to I finally understand that the whole thing is extremely mentally oppressive. There was something very liberating about not believing it anymore. Now, I mean, it's more mentally oppressive if you're a German, I have to think. But even the ostensible beneficiary of the narrative, Jews, not that I ever got anything out of it, but even if you're a Jew, there's something terribly mentally oppressive about the whole story. Because I guess there's this whole idea, oh yes, these Goyim hate us so much, and look what they would do to us if they had a chance. There's something terribly, Gilad Atzmon calls that pre-traumatic, what does he call it?
Stress disorder?
Yeah, well, because normally when it's a soldier, it's post-traumatic stress disorder or syndrome or whatever. His is pre-traumatic. It's like look what these Goyim are going to do to us. It's a kind of induced nuttiness, right? And there's something very psychologically oppressive about it. So that's something that occurred to me, but that narrative, but a lot of these narratives are very psychologically oppressive, perhaps. I mean, all of the sort of original white guilt and toxic masculinity and all of these weird things they're putting out are very psychologically oppressive. So, people rebel against that.
Believe me, I don't want my child. I have a son. I'm going to make damn sure that he doesn't buy into those narratives. That's just totally debilitating. But anyway, I think that was a great wrap up. I mean, we've hit the 2 hour mark. We don't want to
I only anticipated talking for an hour. Maybe. Well, we can do it again, but maybe we should be more disciplined next time. I mean, this is all.
No, that's okay. I think it was a great session. A very, like I said, we touched on a lot of subjects. It was, we didn't focus on bullet points like a hyper autistic people, but that's okay. I think Johnny was very forthcoming and honest, and Jonathan got to ask questions that he cared about. So let's wrap it up. Let Johnny get back to his family, and I'll get back to my island, and Jonathan will probably go to sleep since he's in Spanish time.
Okay,
thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, no, thank you. Okay. Well, we'll do it again sometime if you want.
Okay.
Yes, sure.